our topic is new inspirations in critical times. And the matter of critical times is a topic that several of us have been discussing together. And there have been quite a few sessions on crisis, how to handle crisis, what does it mean? And I also want to bring into this something called Philanthropic Karma, because I think that that is a very important part of the new inspirations in critical times. So normally, a crisis is something that is sudden and big, a big storm, and it happens. Doesn't usually stay for very long, but it's very devastating, and then it goes away. So we think of something like that as a crisis. But there's another aspect to crisis and critical times, which is to be in a critical situation for a long period of time. And long could be many days, many weeks, many months. And on the largest scale of all, it can be the epoch that we're going through. And that is years, it is decades. Maybe we could even say that this century is very much a period of crisis, multiple crises, very destabilized world. Everyone knows the list of crises: war, famine, climate change, the difficulties between the biases, gender bias, race bias, culture bias, all of these things. And we are in times of extremes. The world is very much in a state of imbalance. Even the physical planet, I don't know if you're aware about it, but the planet has, for millennia, it has been wobbling a bit, but now it's wobbling a lot. And the tilt of 23 degrees from the true north is something people assume is stable, but it's not. And there are other imperceptible, unstable things, such as the magnetic orientation north and south. That is very much destabilized. And so there are, indications that the physical planet itself, the ball, that blue pearl in the blackness of space that we're all living on, itself is in trouble. And so the climate change reflects that very much. And the human world, the cultures, the overpopulation, the illnesses, the problems of natural resources, the social problems, all of this is very extreme, and it has been for a long time. And it's getting progressively worse, and it doesn't matter what anyone does or says, it continues to get more difficult. And so I want us to look at how we handle ourselves in an ongoing period of crisis, where crisis is normal. And it does things to the individual, which puts us in a state of hypervigilance. There is a lot more stress than there should be, could be. And there are certain things about our reaction to this which exacerbate it. And so I'd like to talk about what we can do to calm that down a bit. So one aspect of the inspirations for critical times has to do with what happens next. And this question has been asked quite a bit. What is next? Whenever something breaks down or there's a very big change, people have this question. Okay, so everything's broken down. What is next? And of course, the answer normally is we have no idea. So one very problematical aspect of living in critical times is the uncertainty. So instability is already a problem. Then you add to that uncertainty, and it becomes hard for the individual human being, the consciousness, to manage. And so it's very, very helpful if you have an idea about what is next. So let me give you an analogy. Many people recognize the period we're going through, as it is mentioned in India, as Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga means dark times, the night of human experience, the dark night of the soul, it is sometimes called. But what is also something very important to be aware about is that every night is followed by a new dawn. So a clear answer to what is next is dawn. And it is said that the night is darkest just before the dawn. So if we feel that these critical times we're in are really very dark, perhaps it's an indicator that a new dawn is soon. It is just over the horizon. So that means what we need to do is hold out. And who are the people holding out at the moment in the world? And that is people who are taking cover from bombardments in areas where there is war. And especially, I think the whole world is very much focused on the war in Ukraine. And there are a lot of people who are sitting underground in bunkers for weeks together. Now, I think about 3 months has passed now. And who knows how much longer this will go on. And I was reflecting about how people experienced the Second World War, which was a 6-year continuous period of war in Europe. And of course, there are many wars going on in the Middle East, in Africa, in other parts of the world, which have been going on for many years. And people are sitting there not knowing, very, very stressful being in a war situation. And you don't know how long it's going to go on. But you do know that sooner or later it will finish. And if you look at some of the very famous quotations from the Bhagavad Gita, there is one that I think is very helpful in this. And it says that it doesn't matter what situation you are in, it is a spiritual law that no situation can remain the same for all time. It has a fixed duration. And when that duration is finished, it's over. And then you come back to something which is not putting you in distress, something which is not critical, something which corresponds to a comfortable, natural state of being, internally and externally. So this is a very important piece of information to hold on to, because sometimes people get into really big trouble because they give up. They stop holding out and holding on. They do not give importance to resilience and patience and holding out. So this is one thing that I would like everyone to think about and go inside yourself and ask yourself, are you ready to hold on and hold out and remain patient for better times? Because if you are, that's very, very positive. When you are ready to hold on and hold out for as long as it takes, that in itself gives you strength to do that. And what makes you weak is when you get taken over by the uncertainty and it makes you just give up, and then you're finished. Let us look a little bit at philanthropic karma. Everybody knows the word karma, and there are many interpretations and descriptions of the laws of karma. And in the practice of Raj Yoga, study of the laws of karma is a very important component, and it goes together with the meditation. So the laws of karma cover your thoughts, and your thoughts are the seeds. Sometimes people think karma has to do with your actions, but thought is also an action. And because it's so subtle and invisible, a lot of people think that it doesn't count, or it doesn't do anything, or there's no proof, or it's not really karma. But I would beg to differ. The thoughts that you hold in your mind about people actually cause circumstances to go a certain way. Sometimes you may think that circumstances are nothing to do with karma, but it's not really so. There are energies, there are elements that intertwine with each other, and circumstances can also be connected with destiny, predestination. So there are certain circumstances that are nobody's fault, that they just are. It's data, it's a given. But there are other circumstances that are very much influenced by your thinking. And if you have pure thoughts, good thoughts, benevolent thoughts about yourself, about the people in your life, about even the people who you don't know, the whole of the human population is vast and made up of individuals, all of whom are sensitive to thought. And thought includes feelings. So think about this, that when you are faced with all these different circumstances and situations, which includes what you see on the media, what you pick up in social media, what you observe around you, in your family, your community, the world in general, all this is circumstances. And ordinarily, people react to them and respond to them. And if the circumstances are presented as dramatic, negative, impactful, then you are impacted by it and you react in the way that the circumstances predispose you to react, but that's optional. And so the practice of spirituality, knowledge of the laws of spirituality, help us in these things to actually be proactive in terms of the atmosphere. And normally you think of the word atmosphere referring to the weather or referring to a feeling that is in a room where something is happening. It could be a very joyful atmosphere, a very sad atmosphere, a very scary atmosphere. Atmosphere is very much created by people's thinking and people's feeling. And it's interesting that the weather and people's feelings are both called atmosphere. And let's break down the word atmosphere for a moment. And you can think of sphere as a big globe, and you're inside this enormous globe of feelings and vibrations. And Atma is the word for the soul. And so the vibrations are put out by a soul. A soul is surrounded by vibrations, and it's a symbiotic relationship. You're creating the atmosphere, and the atmosphere is impacting you. And so, who is the powerful one in this equation? Because it is an equation. And there's a very, very simple mantra that is very, very well known, but yet it's very subtle and it's very deep. It's very well known to, I would think, everyone who is on this program today, and that is Om Shanti. And people who study and practice Raj Yoga are often using the word Om Shanti in many situations. But it's interesting to look deeply at this word, Om Shanti, because it means that your default condition, regardless of the atmosphere, regardless of the circumstances, your default condition is to be quiet, in a state of peace, and immobile. To do nothing is not necessarily to fail to act, not at all. To be in a state of peace and radiate that peace and do nothing to be part of the chaos that's surrounding you in terms of reactions, but to just be at peace and make your peace with it puts out an atmosphere which changes circumstances. And the circumstances correspond to your essentiality. So the practice, meditation practice, and the deep understanding is, I am a soul at peace. I am quiet. I am still. I do nothing. And that creates something very interesting. I think people feel obliged to do something. There is this expression, do something. There is a disaster, do something. Something collapses, do something. But most of the time, when we find ourselves faced with a very critical situation, a big crisis, a big drama, there's this feeling of helplessness, powerlessness, a sense that there is nothing you can do. And your natural reaction is to do something. And very often people will do things which are inappropriate or ineffective or in the way. And then they need to be made to sit quiet and wait. And that's very difficult for people because there's no belief, there's no practice, there's no sense that all you have to do is do nothing. And if you sit quiet and do nothing in your state of peace, focused on the reality of yourself, it changes circumstances. Because there is another spiritual law that's really well worth knowing, and that is that circumstances are our creation. Yet, so often, we say, well, I can't because. We use this word because all the time. I couldn't do it because. I couldn't reach in time because. I made a mistake because. And the words that come after the word because generally refer to the circumstances which are beyond your control. And so we have this collective belief that circumstances are outside our control, that we have nothing to do with it. We are victims of circumstances. And as long as we don't know any of these spiritual laws, we have no choice. We must remain victims of circumstances. But once you start to study a little bit, practice a little bit, and start working with the spiritual laws, then you can actually come out of this victim consciousness. And even though the circumstances may be very big and that you're nothing to do with what made them arise, and there's nothing you can do to make them go away, but the way that you respond to them is really very impactful. And the first step, or the first key in establishing this impact, is to be in a state of peace. And a state of peace is also a state of acceptance. And sometimes people feel that, well, if you just accept everything that's going on, that's not right, because then you're abjuring your responsibilities. And of course, yes, we do have responsibilities. And in terms of what we can do, it is our responsibility to do that. But when there's nothing you can do, then you have to move away from this feeling of I'm responsible. And some people, they're very fixed on this sentence, I am responsible. And this is actually a mistake. I'm responsible for what I'm responsible for. And you need to make that very clear, set the boundaries. This is my responsibility. And outside, it's not my responsibility. But then in that case, we're talking about doing actions. Now, going back for a moment to this beautiful mantra, Om Shanti, it is said to us in our teachings again and again and again, go to that space of Om Shanti, be a peaceful soul, be in your power, be in your quietness, and do nothing. Even once it was told to me, do nothing very, very slowly, just be, because being does something. And of course, when we're very active and agitated, then it's very difficult to perceive that sitting in stillness, in quiet, is actually a very positive thing to do, because it calms the vibrations, it calms the atmosphere, and it influences the people who are influenced by a disturbed atmosphere. Because when people get desperate, and what do? Generally speaking, when people are in real trouble, big danger, they start thinking about God, they start praying, they start letting go of trying to do anything physical, and they just turn to the spiritual. But it's out of desperation. And so in that situation, a person may not be calm or quiet or still. They may be terrified. They may be hysterical. But practicing to be Om Shanti, to be still, to be quiet, is very, very helpful, because the power in this practice enables you to, when you're in a critical situation, it doesn't destabilize you for very long, because you kick in to your spiritual practice. You recognize when things are completely outside your control, and then you come into your peace and your stillness. Then we're talking also about philanthropic karma. So just being still and spreading vibrations of serenity is very good, but you may want to do more. You may want to go further than that. And there is where pure intentions, good wishes, positive feelings, all of this starts to amplify a very positive energy and bring that into the mix, bring it into the equation. So normally, when you perceive that someone is doing something wrong and you put a value on that, then you start to feel negatively towards them, towards what they did, towards what has happened. And this creates a polarized state. And the imbalance in the world today is very much connected with polarized states. So you will say to me, well, how can I feel positive about people who are bombing other people or shooting other people or something really horrible like that? And it's not really about that. It's really something deeper. There are many circumstances where people are behaving to each other in an extremely bad way. And the reason they're doing that is because they're triggered by a set of beliefs, and that whatever triggers their behavior is because of those beliefs. So when someone does something bad to someone, it lies in these beliefs that it should be like this and not like that, and therefore I'm going to do something about that. This is how most people operate. And the laws of spirituality are actually quite different from the ways of, you could say, conventional morality, how people normally evaluate things. And these ways are very, very potent influences. Take the power of social media, pumping ideas into people which polarize one set of people against another set of people. And those people appear to be completely powerless and taken over and activated. Their behavior is activated by those ideas, and then bad things happen. So spiritual perspective on the world comes from a distance. You're not in the middle of all the things that are going on, but it's quite important to pull yourself out of it. And we talk about being a detached observer. And sometimes people think a detached observer is somebody who doesn't care, somebody who is disconnected, but that's not a detached observer. That's a person who doesn't care and is disconnected. That's not the same thing at all. So we need to make sure that when you hear the word detached observer, you don't immediately associate it with someone who doesn't care and is disconnected. This word detached observer does not imply that, and does not mean that. What does it mean? It means that you're able to see the circumstances from a wider perspective. You care, you are concerned, but you are not overwhelmed and you are not pushed into action by the forces that created that situation in the first place. But you're much more connected with the spiritual laws. So, and it's quite difficult for a person to get into that space and operate from that space. Nevertheless, this is a very important thing to think about, to learn about, and to try to develop. Now, what does it do when a person starts thinking differently and functioning differently? It's really very interesting because it brings others into that same mentality, that same perspective, that same dimension. And then the feelings of equanimity and balance and purity start to come over the circumstances, and they tend to calm everything down. So this is a very important thing. And when you're doing that, or when you're being that, in the eyes of other people, you're clearly doing nothing and you don't know what's going on, and they probably try to get you involved or activate you. And that's why it's quite difficult to hold on to this state of being. And that's why it has to be practiced. So new perspectives on how we handle crisis involves thinking about beliefs and comparing and contrasting most people's beliefs with maybe some other beliefs that most people don't have. And when you think differently, it may be uncomfortable for other people to interpret what you're doing. And so that means you will most likely be considered to be doing something bad. It is very, very normal and common that when somebody is not doing the same as everybody else, then it is considered that whatever they're doing is bad, because different is the same as bad. Actually, different is different and bad is bad. But the way people have been working with their beliefs about right and wrong, good and bad, is so powerful, and so deeply ingrained into the global culture that the energies that bring things to a calm state are considered suspicious, suspect, something wrong. And there are thousands and thousands of logical reasons why they take that position according to them. And so this is why I think it's quite important to think about autonomy. Go back to that mantra for a moment. Om Shanti, I am a soul at peace. I am quiet. I am comfortable in myself. I am at one with what's going on. I am detached and loving. I am being. I'm not doing anything. I am being. And then what will you do has to do with what you're going to think. So think an atmosphere. You know, when you meditate, you return to a state of being that is before action. Action takes place when you are, in the body and in the circumstances and doing stuff. But being is separate from acting. Being is what you are. Being is to be pure, peaceful, loving, in your power, and free. You separate yourself from all of the energies that are trying to get into you and make you feel or act according to the forces that are being projected onto you. And so you are, in that way, a victim of circumstances. But being is free from those things. Being is independent. And being is the essential human condition. You will not hear about this in any of the cultures or religions. You might hear the words, but there's very little example of someone who's just being. You do get it in the natural world. Different animals, birds, fish, they're just there being, they're not doing anything. And they spend quite a lot of time like that. And then when they need to do something, then they do that, and then they go back to being. And it is very natural for human beings to do that, because when you spend a lot of time being, you become very connected with the energies of nature, which are fundamentally stable. But we are in critical times. That means that the natural stability of the natural world, the planet, the systems, all of them are breaking down, shifting, collapsing, reforming, and people are in that situation as well. So who's responsible for what? Is climate change disturbing people, or are people disturbing the climate? There's a debate about that. Is it the people who create social conditions, or the social conditions that create the people? There's a debate about that too. And a lot of times people will blame the identified offending person. But what we can also look at is that this combination, this symbiotic combination between the human beings, the circumstances, and the time that we're passing through. And we have to understand that we are in very high intensity change, and it's nobody's fault. So the blame game doesn't really take us anywhere. But we need to understand how to be in very volatile, critical conditions. And I think because people have really forgotten how to be a long, long time ago, that perhaps we have to learn it once again. And being in this sense means we need to take time to practice, to be Om Shanti. When you're still and when you're quiet, your needs are less. Sometimes when people are in very dangerous situation, or they're caught in an avalanche or something, the way to survive is to be still and be quiet, breathe as little as possible, do not get agitated. You have a better chance of survival because you're not using up all your resources in a hysterical way. But dangerous circumstances or situations that you land in all of a sudden trigger these reactions, and then we can't get through. So this is why we have to think about our practice. How should you meditate? What should you meditate on? Why should you meditate? When should you meditate? All these questions are there. But actually, to be in a state of Om Shanti is 24/7, really. Because first of all, you are, and then you come into action. So this is the natural way. So again and again throughout the day, just see how much you are pulled into action, which is because of anxiety, or action, which is because you're unable to just sit quiet and do nothing. There's a lot of complaint about how much time people spend on their devices and talking on video calls, audio calls, all the time being away from the self. You don't even realize that by doing those things, you're away from yourself and all your power is draining out. And it's so ubiquitous, it is so common that nobody really notices what's happening here. Completely opening ourselves up to any and every external influence and not resourcing ourselves from within, so that we are getting very, very drained. So therefore, we need to remind each other that in critical times, I need to be still and quiet in my power, connected with myself, connected with the higher force, higher power, the supreme being, and then put out good feelings, put out good intentions. See people with love. If a person is doing a bad action and you look at them with hatred, it will actually intensify the bad action. And that's what people normally do. But if you just stay in your peace and stay in your goodness, it's a very, very subtle influence, but it is an influence. And when you do this a lot and patiently, because It's not a practice that produces instant consequences. No, it's a long-term thing. And you just sit in your quiet, patiently, and put out the good vibrations. In order to do that, you need to have a focus. And your focus has to be what you see in the future. You cannot do this if you do not see a beautiful future. And a beautiful future is not just a nice idea, something you made up, some kind of utopian vision. A lot of people have that and then it breaks down. That's not really what I'm talking about. It's to do with really understanding about a huge night, a period of darkness, a period of great darkness. And in that darkness, as in every sky at night, there are stars. Of course, there are clouds between us and the stars, but there are stars. And it's a very important analogy that while you are going through dark times, difficult times, you're going somewhere. You're going to a space of light, and that light corresponds to your essence. And when you stay focused on that future, connected with the divine source, be in your peace, then you can really begin to exude an atmosphere. And people are influenced by atmosphere. I remember when I was very, very young, people used to ask me, what do you want to be when you grow up? And as a small child of 4 or 5 or 6, I used to say, I want to be the weather. And they all thought I was nuts. You mean you want to be a meteorologist? I said, no, I don't. The weather. And even I thought that was a bit odd, but other people thought that was totally odd. Oh, you've got to be some profession. I said, no, I want to be the weather. And it's really when I started studying and practicing spirituality that I realized that there was something in me that was drawn to the idea of atmosphere, the idea of creating atmosphere through focused thought and learning how to capture that essential inner quiet and silence and then amplify it by connecting to the divine source, to God, and then letting it radiate out. This creates atmosphere. And I was looking at the study that we do every day, and there was one little sentence that really stood out for me. So I will share that with you. And that is that your inheritance creates the world of heaven. And so what is your inheritance? Your inheritance is a body of wisdom, a body of knowledge, ideas. So when you are really connected to the idea of Om Shanti, the idea of being a soul at peace, quiet, immobile, just being, and then spreading that quality of your being and knowing all the details of finer points of spiritual philosophy, you realize how much it is different from the beliefs of most people, because those beliefs tend to try to repress, react, to suppress, to force things to be a certain way. That's very different. This is to really be the essential self, connected with a great force, and then spreading that. And then the individual actions that you do, because life goes on, you wake up in the morning, you do things, you handle your life, your responsibilities, but always do that. And at the same time, building this atmosphere, because it becomes like a powerful force that operates in your environment. And the question arises, how far can you spread your energy? How many feet, how many miles, how many continents and oceans can you cover with your mind? And it builds slowly with time. And of course, you experience a lot of obstacles along the way. Sometimes you think, no, I'm not doing this right. I have to rethink this. And every time you do that, you get it more subtly, more deeply. And the spread of your vibration is wider and more influential. And this is a lifelong process. We are in critical times that are for our whole lives. We are impacted by these crises one after another, and the whole thing of being in very dark times. And sometimes we just don't realize how much it is stressful and debilitating to carry that weight. And so we need strength, and we need to practice being natural, being in our essence, and take time to be still and do nothing. And there is a very beautiful expression from Christianity, which I like very much. It says, be still and know that I am God. That means it's not your responsibility. It is the responsibility of a higher power to carry this world from its current state to a beautiful state. And then we have to do our bit to help the process along. But this part of being still and being connected and spreading an ever more powerful atmosphere is, I think, going to produce the results that we would all like to have. So I will stop there and turn it over to Madhavi. Thank you so much.
The sister asked earlier on in the when you started, how many laws are there, spiritual laws?
It's like the laws of physics. These are natural laws, and they are to be discovered. They are to be investigated, and many of them are revealed. But I don't think it's meaningful to try to quantify them. What I think is meaningful is to consider, when you're in the midst of different circumstances, what are the influences that are operating? Because mostly people are very conscious about religious laws or secular laws, and they determine what's right and wrong according to those. But then if you stop for a minute and you think about spirituality, and of course you have to study it to really think about it meaningfully, and then you start to be aware that there are certain laws, like I took up some of them today, but it's a law that whatever is the situation that you're in, it cannot go on indefinitely. It will come to an end and something else will come up. That's a law. Yeah, no, it's a law that when you are in your peace, you can overpower the existing circumstances, because it's a law that the energy of the soul conscious soul is greater than the energy of the person who's disconnected from their essence.
How can I recognize whether something I am going through is a new account or settlement of the past?
On the whole, at the present time, this time is called Kayamat time. Kayamat means settlement. So the settlement of accounts, because we're at the end of a time cycle. And whenever you get to the end of a time cycle, all the outstanding debts have to be settled. And we can create new accounts, but I think the new accounts we need to create are to do with our thoughts and our attitudes, where we would normally be reactive. Try being proactive and put out positive atmosphere and feelings. That would be creating a new account. And when you're doing that under duress, but you're handling it, then you're settling an old account.
Yes, thank you. How does one give best wishes to others when you know that that person is doing something not nice?
The way that you do it is to say, okay, this person is an actor, and the actor is not the role that they're playing. The actor is a soul, and the role that they're playing is destined. So a person may be destined to do something really bad or really stupid, and you're looking at that. And so obviously you can't have good wishes about that, because that's what you're looking at. But then if you look at the soul and know that every soul is essentially pure and peaceful, then it's a lot easier to have good wishes, because you cannot do anything about something that's predestined. You can try, but there's nothing you can do. So when you spend a lot of energy trying to change other people, usually you find it doesn't work, because your jurisdiction is your own self. You are also an actor, and you also have a role, and moment by moment your role is playing out, and you're responsible for your own self. But you cannot do anything about the power of destiny on other people, even on your own self. So when it's a matter of destiny influencing you, where there's nothing you can do, there you have to make your peace with it and keep going, because that too will pass.
What is the attitude to have when your friends criticize you when we are detached about political issues or the vaccination history? They say that if we don't claim our rights, nothing will change in the world, and the population will continue to be sacrificed. What to do? Support the change or be quiet without getting involved?
Well, you have to make some decisions for your own self. And whatever decision you make, you can be a vaxxer or an anti-vaxxer or a neutral. And then you have to deal with the other people who don't like that. But these are kind of tests, because you have a right to your position, and you have a right to your vote. You must be able to stand up for the position that you take. And if somebody doesn't like it, then you have to agree to differ. But you don't have to be You don't have to be pushed around. You can set your boundaries. The person who is saying all sorts of things to you, giving you all kinds of logic, may or may not be telling you the truth. You adopt your position and you stand up for your convictions. And at the same time, it's good to have harmonious relationships. So you don't need to get into an argument. That's up to you.
Mm-hmm. He's saying, being a Westerner, what attracted you to Brahmakumaris? And please explain your journey from there on till today.
Well, first, very quickly, is I am not a Westerner, whatever that is.
Thank you.
And I am like a world citizen. I've had many, many births. I've been in every country, every culture, every religion, and so on and so forth. So I can't allow anybody to classify me according to my current car that I'm driving. The body is the car. And I am an individual who recognizes truth when I see it, in whatever clothing it may be dressed. And that is as simple as that.
Do you mean that we don't carry forward our karmic account into the next cycle? So I'm not sure where she picked that up from.
Okay, yeah, no, you're right. We don't. In a way, we don't, because once one cycle is finished, then everybody goes back to their seed form. And the seed is the essence. And as you go through your many, many births in every cycle, the seed grows into a very big and complicated tree, which includes lots of karmic accounts. And everything gets finished in the end of this life. But there are many things that we have an opportunity to carry forward. And this is very important, because what you need is to recognize that this period of time that we call the Confluence Age is the time when you have the opportunity to pull into your consciousness the full knowledge that we are receiving, all the information about spirituality, karma, yoga, all of these things. Pull that into your soul and also draw energy from the Supreme Being into your soul. This is your income, which will carry you forward in the coming births of the next cycle. But all of your old accounts, you finish them off and start afresh, but you need a good income because you've got a long journey ahead of you. It's a long cycle.
What have been the main turning points in your personal development? What has been your essential learning? It feels as if you have sort of, moved away from loads of processes and things, and you become quite self-sovereign and sort of independent. So what brought that in, and what were the things that you had to emerge within yourself, to reach this place?
I think in life, there are always going to be critical moments and crises where things fall apart, everything goes wrong, you get betrayed or sidelined, or a powerful relationship falls apart, someone important leaves the body, you get left behind, left out, whatever it is. All of these are moments where you really have the opportunity to use the theoretical knowledge and practice that you've been learning and make yourself come to another level. And I believe very much in that, and I've used it in my own trajectory. It was said to me by a very great yogi, Dadi Janki. She said, always maintain an attitude of learning. So even when things are really difficult or whatever, there is very important information contained within that situation, including even a big illness or a defamation or all sorts of things. They contain a message that you need to learn, because if you don't do that, you won't develop. And if the big crises or the little crises don't come, you just stay in a status quo and you don't move forward. So I've always been open to and ready for any kind of drama that wants to come along. And because I know that it takes me forward, and I'm not done with this yet. I don't want to just sit down and say, okay, I've been practicing this for X number of years and I've got it all figured out, and so I'll just carry along on cruise control. No, not interested. We need to go from one level to another, to another, to another. There's no end to our possibilities of growing and developing.
You are a very courageous soul. And whatever you go through, that's okay. You know, of course, like you said, we are still work in progress, but that is a power that you do have. And that's amazing. And it comes across very clearly. You do it with love and humility, but you have that power. So kudos to you. Andre wants you to share the powers of the soul, which would allow us to access the spiritual laws.
Well, this is a very good question, actually, because the thing that gets in our way is our arrogance. And so allow those situations that break your ego to do their work. I think that is really going to allow us to access the spiritual laws, because we block it, you know, our arrogance. We say, I am it and I know it, and that's that. And so we remain on the other side of a big wall. So that, I think, is a big key.
How can we help someone very close in their difficult time? I think this came in when you were talking about being a detached observer, but
there is a belief that the most important thing is to help somebody. And people think that they interpret helping somebody as, you know, doing their work for them, cushioning them from their lessons. And so a lot of the so-called help is not really helping anyone. And so I actually, you know, sometimes people tell me, oh, you have to help this one and that one and the other one. And I say, no, I'm not going to help anybody for anything about anything. I'm not a helper. And because you see, a person, if they can help themselves, they get strong. And if you do that for them, they stay weak, and then you get into complicated karmic bondages and dependencies and so on. I mean, I think it's very good to be supportive, be encouraging, but I think we need to really think about this word helping people. I'm not so keen on it.
Can Sister Denise explain the difference between karma and destiny?
Well, I did a series of videos with Magla Pillay. I think we did 120 of them, called Karma, Destiny, and Choice, because it's a huge subject. So if you go on my YouTube channel, you will see, I don't know if I put all of them up there, but there's a good number of them. Because you see, these energies are all the time working together. It is a normal human tendency to look at one subject and not look at it holistically in the context of all the other subjects. And then you think that that's the only thing that's operating, but it never is. So what you do as your karma And the circumstances you find yourself in may be destiny. Some of that is consequent of your previous karma. Some of it is just the way it is, nothing to do with your previous karma, because there is such a thing as your destiny. And then you have to make choices. If something bad is going on and you say, I choose to interpret that this is a punishment, and then you create all these attitudes of guilt and shame and all of that, which actually weakens you. With the very same thing, you could say, I choose to call it a lesson or a test, and then you can set about learning the lesson and passing the test. And that would be much more to your advantage, but doesn't change the fact that there is karma, there is destiny. You have to make a choice. And differentiating them is also a choice, because the way that you interpret what's in front of you determines the way you handle it. And that is your karma. So I think it's very important to recognize if you have a special destiny. A lot of people do. Everybody has some sort of destiny. And when something is destiny, you'll know that I have no choice. There's nothing I can do about it. I have to accept it. Then there are other situations where you do have to choose. And it's a choice about whether you are doing the right thing, whether you're courageous, or whether you just go back to the same old bad habit patterns. And that's up to you to discern.
In fact, that I would say is another quality that I've been aware of in you, and it's helped me to emerge that within me, is the power of acceptance. It sounds very simple, and it's not just accepting, we say, but it's that deep, which I've seen, and then cut that with courage works magic. Madhuri is saying, she says, a friend of mine asked me when there is a crisis or upheaval. For example, the rise of extreme right-wing nationalism in India. What do we as BKs do to change the situation? So what is the best way, she wants to know, to answer such questions?
You need to realize that they are trying to kind of provoke you. And because that person is afraid and they want you to, quote unquote, do something, And this is where we come back to this question of destiny. You see, part of the study and teachings that we are looking at, which are very, very ancient teachings that are referred to in the Bhagavad Gita, is that the period of time that we're going through, critical times, does lead to intense and absolute upheaval on all level, whether it's in the natural world, whether it is conflict, extreme conflict between cultures and religions. This is coming. And the thing is, what's important is to be able to get through it, because this is not something that you can stop. It's already way ahead of anything like that. It's like people trying to stop climate change. You can't stop climate change. You can't stop all of this stuff. But what you have to do, it's not your responsibility to change those things. It's your responsibility to get through it. And so we need to develop very great inner strength. That's how we get through.
What to do if one is considered to be in a blind faith who follows spirituality by family members? So I think she's coming across a lot of resentment. Yeah. Any thoughts on that? Any tips?
Well, this is very normal. People get afraid when you are in an institution or an organization or something which has a set of precepts that they find difficult to work with. It's something Shakespeare said: "Do not put your heart on your sleeve." It's a very deep point. Whatever it is that you are doing, your spiritual life is private. And while it is very good to discuss it with people who want to understand it, there's no point in putting yourself in a situation where you have an antagonistic or adversarial relationship with people. So you may need to balance your external with a more powerful internal form of spirituality so that they don't hear about it, but they feel it. You must take responsibility for yourself. You must create your life. You're responsible to look after yourself, maintain yourself financially, and in society, the society has expectations of you, and you have to do that in the context of your spiritual practice, and you have to do your spiritual practice in the context of your the exterior social, professional, and personal life that you have. So you have to create balance.
This will have to be the last question, King. She says, how do I know when I'm detached? Sometimes I feel that I'm being unfeeling.
Very, very normal for people to think that detachment means cut off and be dissociated or disconnected. That's not detachment. Detachment is very deep and very subtle. It means that you are not controlled by external situations, and you are not made to respond according to the situations, but you respond according to yourself. So you are not in the bondage of external things, but it doesn't mean that you're cut off. So there's something deep to think about.
So, of course, a very big thanks to Sister Denise. We also, there's a request for you to talk about true acceptance. So all of us would like to join you in a short meditation, please, Denise, if that's okay.
Of course, of course. So just take a moment to go within and be. Think deeply about this beautiful expression, Om Shanti. I am. I exist. I am at peace with who I am and what I am. I am connected with the ocean of peace. I have access to huge power of peace. Let me take that into myself. Whatever is going on in the world, I must make my peace with it and consider it's not good, it's not bad, it just is. I must make my peace with it in order to maintain my freedom and come to terms with everything and know that I am forever All these events are passing like scenes from the window of a train on a long, long journey. Be still and know that you are with God and God is with you. Om Shanti.
Oh, that was so beautiful. Thank you. God bless and Om Shanti.